We have come now at last to the end for now of Rachel Reid's Game Changers universe with The Long Game, published in 2022, not all that long ago. This is a long one, and I expect it will be a fairly long video, so we should get right into the characters and the plot summary so we have plenty of time to get into critical analysis, discussing uh, the sex practices of our two favorite characters, Shane and Ilya. Although, based on the reaction from the internet, really, there's one favorite character there, and someone that I think is misunderstood. But we'll talk more about that. So I am going to go through the characters, recap the plot of this book if you haven't read it in a while, or you don't plan on reading it, but you would still like to enjoy the discussion and analysis, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit about my thoughts on the series as a whole, but I think I'm going to save that for a separate video where we cover all 6 books. Reid chose not to continue writing novels in this universe, although I think she has said that there might be short stories and novellas. But me, I'm gonna squeeze as much as I can out of it. An unfortunate but apt gesture. Let's get started. First, the characters. There are many, many, many of them. The book is almost 440 pages long, and a lot of it is the two male main characters, Ilya Rozanov and Shane Hollander, and I nailed Ilya Rozanov this time. It took 6 books, but I know his name. But this is also a vast universe of characters, and we get lots of cameos from all the previous books, plus characters who are a little bit more relevant directly to Shane and Ilya's story, both friends and antagonists. It's just like a panoply of characters. Again, the two main characters are Shane Hollander and Ilya Rozanov. They are both 29 years old. They are two of the most famous, most elite hockey players in the NHL, and they are two sides of one rivalrous coin that the league and the fans and their teams have constructed over many years. However, that has begun to kind of fade a bit as we get into the long game. Because at the end of Heated Rivalry, several years before the events of the long game take place, Ilya has moved from Boston to Ottawa. Boston was an elite team. Ilya made it an elite team while he was there, and they were direct rivals to Montreal, Shane's team. Ilya is now at the Ottawa Centaurs, while Shane remains at the Montreal Voyageurs. Shane is a Type A control freak who is driven largely by shame and embarrassment, as we saw in Heated Rivalry, while Ilya is a bit more a loosened up character compared to Shane. Ilya presents as the life of the party. He had a reputation, still has until the events of this book take place, the reputation of being a playboy who is good with the ladies, and on the DL with the guys, he is bisexual, whereas Shane is gay. Ilya is Russian and has lived in North America for the past 11 or so years, but did not become a citizen of the United States when he was in Boston and is not yet a citizen of Canada. And Ilya made the choice at the end of Heated Rivalry to go to Ottawa, possibly the worst team in the league, in order to begin to cool the rivalry between him and Shane, to put them on a path of what Shane called the long game at the end of Heated Rivalry toward coming out eventually, perhaps 10 or more years in the future, and also so he could be physically a little bit closer to Shane. Boston is quite a schlep to Montreal, whereas Ottawa is still a schlep, but you can drive it. Like I said, there are numerous characters in this book. We get a check-in on every couple from the previous books, and every man from the previous books is named in this one, except for one. That would be Kyle from Common Goal. His name is not even uttered. He's too busy doing important bartender things. We don't lavish a lot of attention on those characters. They are mostly by way of cameos. Scott Hunter has his most significant cameo toward the end of the book. I don't believe his husband Kip makes an actual appearance in the book, but he is name dropped. Ryan Price and Fabian Sala are also basically cameos, but we actually see both of them in this book. Eric Bennett also is just name dropped, and like I said, we don't even hear about Kyle. Troy Barrett and Harris, what's his name? Drover! Troy Barrett and Harris Drover are much more relevant side characters in this book. They are the characters from the previous book to this. And I would say that the previous book, Role Model in the Long Game, they're not like one continuous book, but they feel a lot more like a part one and a part two than Heated Rivalry and The Long Game do to me. Largely because the plots of Role Model and The Long Game are kind of intertwined. Several other characters to keep in mind are Yuna and David Hollander, Shane's parents, who are very present throughout the plot of this book for both Shane and Ilya. They are kind of adopted parents for Ilya, who has lost his family, his mother to suicide and his father to old age. He also has no relationship with his living relatives, particularly his asshole brother Andre. There are several other teammates who have made appearances in previous books and are relevant characters in this one. On Ilya's side, in particular, Wyatt Hayes, the goalie for the Ottawa Centaurs. We got to know him very well in Tough Guy. Luca Haas, a young rookie on the Centaurs, is also a fairly relevant character, and it seems like there was maybe going to be a book about him at some point, but Reid has shelved that, at least for now. On Shane's side, we have Hayden Pike, the one person on the Voyagers who knows about Shane and Ilya. He found out about them at the end of Heated Rivalry. Hayden is Shane's probably his best friend in Montreal, but he has another extremely close friend, JJ Boiseau. I said I would look it up when I was recording this. Supposedly I took 7 years of French, but let's see if I got this anywhere close to right.
Boiseau.
Oh, that's not it. There's no way. Come on. Is it supposed to be Boiseau, but it's just spelled with a Z? Is it supposed to be 2 S's? Is this like a Quebecois thing? I don't know. I think it's Boiseau. Anyway, we'll just call him JJ. JJ is another very close friend of Shane's, and he and everyone else on the Voyagers knows that Shane is gay, but Hayden is the only one who knows about Ilya, and that becomes very relevant for JJ. 3 other important side characters. I told you there's a lot of characters in this book. One is Farah Jalali. This is Shane and Ilya's agent. 2 is Galina Molchalina, Ilya's Russian therapist. And last, and certainly least, is NHL Commissioner Roger Crowell. All right, now with all that table setting, let's get into the story. The story begins in July, and we will proceed from July of one year through the following October. So the story of The Long Game takes place over about 15 months. And I'm not entirely sure, but I believe the implication is that it's 2019. This book has an epilogue, but no prologue, but chapter 1 kind of serves as a prologue. In this chapter, we get the reestablishment right from the get-go of the rivalry between Shane and Ilya. They are running outside, and they are competing with each other running. That is the Heated Rivalry. It does what it says on the tin. These guys are rivals with each other. Like, on the ice, off the ice, they just are always in competition with each other. It is friendly competition at this point, though, because they are now well and truly lovers. Chapter 1 includes that cute little outdoor running scene, and then we get introduced to Farah, their agent, who they come out to, Ilya as bisexual, and the two of them as in a relationship with each other, and this kind of sets up the stakes of the book. They are not out as a couple. They are thinking about maybe doing that one day, and this book is going to be about how they reason about that together and how that all goes down. But they are still in their plan. I believe right at the beginning, Shane invokes the phrase "the long game" that he mentioned at the end of Heated Rivalry. They are in this maybe for another 10 years. Shane is also about to enter free agency, where he could choose to leave Montreal, but he has, at the beginning of this book, no intention of doing that. He and the Voyagers have already won 3 Stanley Cups together. He thinks it's a great team. He's doing great there. He plans on staying. The first 4 chapters of the book are kind of an extended prologue, actually. In July, we're in the off season, so we get some time with the 2 guys together, and we start establishing all of the problems of the plot. So Ilya is having, foreboding dreams about his mother, who we know from Heated Rivalry passed away due to suicide. She struggled with depression, and this seems to be something that Ilya is struggling with. We see the 2 of them, and a lot of our side characters, including ones that I didn't even mention, like these interesting couple, Max and Leia, who are all hockey coaches at the Game Changers hockey camp, which is a very cute in-universe nod to the name of the series in the book. Leia is a woman coach at this camp, and she is actually probably the most accomplished and has the most medals of anyone there, including all the guys. And she is married to this guy, Max Riley, who is trans. And it just kind of establishes Game Changers hockey camp as this like highly inclusive, highly diverse place where it is safe to be queer or not a straight white man and into hockey. Ryan Price is also a coach there, and Ilya suggests to Shane that perhaps they could go on a double date with Ryan and Ryan's main squeeze, Fabian. And this is continuing to like slowly unfold all of the problems of the plot. They do go on that double date, and it is nice for them to be out like physically, and also out as queer men and out as in a relationship, but in this like very contained little way. And it doesn't go great for Shane. He's very awkward naturally, so he's just awkward on this date, but he is not comfortable with being out in this way. And that is going to be a significant problem of the plot for him, and an extreme point of friction and tension between him and Ilya. But in these early chapters, we kind of know that something is going to happen. Ilya thinks he would do absolutely everything to protect this, and he was constantly terrified that when it came to it, he wouldn't be able to, because the day would come. Fabian asks the question that, perhaps many of the readers are asking themselves, but everyone knows you're friends, obviously. You have this charity together. What difference does it make if you also kiss? Shane opened his mouth to explain the difference, but he couldn't quite find the words. The way Fabian said it made the distinction sound so unimportant. It really shouldn't make a difference, but it did. And this is something that we got a lot of, especially toward the end of Heated Rivalry, and we will get many, many spoonfuls of in the long game, which is the fact of their professional rivalry and them being at the peaks of their careers and not wanting to sabotage that. But also the question of, is it more the fans in the league, or is it more the guys who are holding them back from coming out? Shane does some potentially problematic comparison. Comparison is the thief of joy, between he and Ilya and Ryan and Fabian, and asks if they seem as in love as Ryan and Fabian seem. And Ilya says, "We are very good at pretending to not be in love. Maybe we are bad at showing it when we are allowed." And in these early chapters, in this extended prologue, we also kind of get a timeline check-in, because Brandon Weeb, the coach of Ottawa, has just started, so that sets us as being a little before the plot of Role Model. So this book is kind of the Godfather 2 of Game Changers. It takes place before and after the previous one, Role Model. While we are getting just this like domestic life of Shane and Ilya, we get some time with Hayden, Shane's best friend, who has kids, and Shane not so much, but Ilya especially, like his broveries are like starting to like signal very hard. Like he is entranced by the idea of children. And Ilya is also just like better with the kids at the Game Changers camp. Like he's very good at diffusing situations. Shane is very bad at like doing anything. Shane is like the kind of expert at something who is very good personally, but is not necessarily a very good leader. It kind of calls into question like why he is a captain on the Voyagers, other than he's just the best player on the team. But it's in these early chapters where we also kind of reestablish something that was like present in Heated Rivalry, but is much more present in the long game, which is that Ilya is perceptive. This is a word that he will come to know over the course of this book and use, but he also has much higher emotional intelligence than Shane. And that is on display like in the camp where these two kids are fighting with each other, and Shane doesn't deal with it very well at all, and Ilya does. And it's in that scene where Ilya calls the guys ding-dongs, and I love that. That's the best insult. People should use the insult ding-dong way more than they do right now, which is hardly at all. They go to Fabian's show. It is very nice. Fabian is a very like sensual and sexual performer, and Shane is kind of like into him a little bit too, and they carry that sexual energy into their first of many, 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 many sex scenes. I don't know if I'm even going to discuss all of them. There are very, very many of them. After that, we fast forward from the summer to the fall. It's October, and we are going to have deep dives on several months taking us through the rest of this book. So, October. The season has begun, and Shane asks Ilya if he's ready to do another season of this. Ilya's heart stuttered. What did that question mean? Another season of what? Shane pulled back enough to look him in the eye. hiding. Ilya loved hockey, but he lived for the summers now when he can be with Shane. It's also at the opening of the season where we get very firmly established that Shane wants to be at the Voyagers and win Stanley Cups. He thinks that he has the opportunity to create a dynasty there. Dynasty, by the way, is a word that is used to describe kingdoms and empires. Remember that. So Ilya loves hockey but lives for the summers. When we get Shane's perspective at the opener for the Voyagers, he thinks he loves being a Montreal Voyager. And it's because it's great. It's great to win. And Ilya is miserable being at Ottawa, a choice he made for Shane, because they suck. Ottawa's team openers were more like a preemptive apology. And on top of having to hide and being on a team that sucks, Ilya also doesn't feel like he's a good captain at the beginning of the book, and he kind of isn't. Even though he has like all these leadership qualities that we see on display at the camp, he doesn't really bring that to the Centaurs. And right from the get-go, Ilya is a bit bitter about the decision that he made to leave Boston to go to Ottawa. He knows that if he had stayed at Boston, he would be winning Stanley Cups, or at least he and Shane would be vying against each other, like the two best players on the two best teams, for the highest honor in hockey, and now he has traded that away. But from the very beginning, he thinks that that was the right decision. Ilya could build a life here in Shane's hometown of Ottawa. Eventually, he could become a Canadian citizen and retire and start a new adventure with Shane. They do have sex another time, but because they are apart, they use FaceTime and not Skype, finally. And we find out that they both have tripods for phone sex, so they're very prepared. Another thing that's established in, it might have been established in like the July prologue, but that's that Shane is on a performance diet. This is gonna come up all the fucking time in this book. It came up in the dinner date with Ryan and Fabian, so it must have been established in the July section. I'm not gonna dwell too much on this, I don't think, except where it becomes relevant for the plot. But basically, he is only eating like extremely clean food. He's like doing 75 hard, but like he's like doing 365 hard. Shane's character is 365 hard, and it is destroying him, and it is destroying his relationship with Ilya. That's kind of the point of the book. Shane, while they're on the road, is talking with Hayden, and they're talking about kids, and he's asking, his broveries are also, kind of signaling, but they probably just like aren't, they're not getting enough carbs like Ilya's are, because Ilya like eats cheeseburgers and drinks beer, and Shane is only feeding his broveries like kale and protein powder. But nevertheless, he's also thinking about children, so he asks Hayden if he thinks he would be a good father. And Hayden says, sure, you'd be the responsible one who makes sure they like eat vegetables and brush their teeth and stuff. Ilya would be the fun one who buys them jet skis for their 10th birthdays. Ilya is also starting to think about how Ottawa could be a better team, and he thinks that there's missing a player, and we know, because we read the previous book, that that's going to be Troy. And during this time, they're on the road in Columbus, and there is Columbus slander again in this book. We got the same thing in Tough Guy. Ilya says, next time I sign with a shit team in a boring city, I will choose Columbus. And my note there is just, hey! Oh, there's another character I totally forgot about, and that's Rose, because she doesn't come up a lot in this book. Rose is the movie star who Shane hung out with and had like a brief relationship with in Heated Rivalry before he was like 100% sure that he was gay. They have like a little shopping time together, like private shopping time together in this book. and I have in my notes here that Rachel Reid is constantly finding new and creative ways to describe blushing for Shane, because he's always blushing. He and Rose are eating sushi, and when Rose says that Ilya loves Shane so much, Shane is described as turning the color of his raw tuna. Anyway, all of the characters around our main guys are kind of like the characters in the situation is just like pushing on them more and more to be like, you should not do this anymore. And Rose is one of those characters. She says, do what makes you happy, live how you want, love who you want. People will judge you, hate you, criticize you, but plenty more will support you and love you. And in the end, no one matters except the people you care about. Your parents support you, your best friend supports you. Who are you really worried about? This is the same thing that Fabian asked. She also asks about the performance diet. She asked him like, does it make you feel good? And Shane frowned at his bowl of kale. I keep saying it does, but it might be the discipline that makes me feel better, not the food. We are not going to get any resolution to this, by the way. This is just going to magically solve itself, which I don't love. There's a lot more hockey stuff in this book than there was in Heated Rivalry, so we actually get to see Shane and Ilya play against each other. There's a very cute chapter which begins with them on the ice in a face-off saying, hi, hi. And the chapter ends with them saying that in bed. It's a nice little construction. And it's a nice little sex scene which begins with Shane getting himself preemptively ready for Ilya, and they're talking on the phone about it, and they're both pretty revved up. And we also get one of the many, many indications of what a type A control freak Shane is when, after their finish, we learn Shane was absolutely covered in cum, which Ilya you know, it happens. It happens. Shane was absolutely covered in cum, which Ilya was sure he'd be grossed out by in about half a second, and he is immediately. And Ilya cleans him up. It's very nice. Sex was great, but moments like this one, where they could cuddle and caress and just exist alone together in a quiet room, were Shane's favorite thing. We do get a lot of domesticity in this book. But it is often like shaded with gloom and the impending sense of doom and other things that rhyme like that. There's bad vibes in the room. But it is this, it feels like Reid is trying to like pull the narrative toward the love that these two guys share. So we get this like very, very hot sex scene. And then the next chapter is us literally getting that line from the perspective of Shane being like, but I like this other thing better. And then that leads into this very cute scene, which is Hayden's wife has sprained her ankle and they have to go to the hospital. So Shane and Ilya have to babysit their kids. And there's like fingernail painting, and the kids decide that even though Hayden and what is Hayden's wife's name? It's not in my notes. I don't remember her name, but even though they have not told the kids about Shane and Ilya, the kids can just like sense it in the way that precocious children can sense things. They are perceptive like Ilya, although he doesn't know that word yet. They say, "Are you two boyfriends? Are you two in love with each other? You should get married." And they marry them, and it's very, very, very cute. It's super cute. At the end of the October run of chapters, Ilya is trying to come into his own as team captain. He thinks like, I should like have a party. I never have people over because, and this is like another, like this is something that neither he and Shane do because they're just like, they're very private because they're hiding something. But Ilya decides to host a Halloween party, and he's dressed up in a gladiator costume, and Shane has seen it, and he's super turned on by that. And so Shane, getting way outside of his comfort zone, tells Ilya to keep the costume on, and he comes over to his house from Montreal with a butt plug in. Damn, Shane. They have some very great sex, but Ilya cries afterwards in a way that he doesn't find very explicable. The narrator says it was embarrassing and inappropriate after sex. These are negative thoughts that Ilya is having. And the end of the October section really feels like an act break. We're about a third of the way through the book. We see this the next morning when the sun had just begun to rise. Ilya watched Shane drive away. He stood on his front step for several minutes after, staring in the direction the car had gone and shivering in his gym shorts and t-shirt. Then he went inside, closed the door, and burst into tears. He probably should get some professional help. We then lead into November, and right at the beginning of November, he has found a Russian therapist, Galina Molachina, and she is going to work with him. It is very nice to speak Russian with someone. Shane has been learning quite a bit of Russian, but the only person that Ilya regularly spoke Russian with in North America at all was this woman Svetlana, who I don't know if I even mentioned in my Heated Rivalry review, but they were buddies back in the day. But now he has a person who he can open up to in this therapist, and she kind of immediately puts her finger on a couple things, particularly that there is an imbalance between him and Shane, that Shane is out about their relationship to more people than Ilya is. Ilya is out to no one about their relationship, whereas Shane has his parents and Rose and Hayden. When they get started, Galina says to Ilya, "As you probably know, mental health isn't a popular concept among our people." She means Russians. And Ilya says, "Not for hockey players either." Their first session is mostly about his mom. We don't get to see the session. We just jump to the end after he is kind of bled out all of the poison of these negative thoughts that he's been having, and he thinks that he feels tired, but better maybe. I would like to do this again. So this is going to be a running thing for him. And after this, he decides that he's going to go to the Weird Health grocery store. I think he means Whole Foods, and get things to make dinner for Shane that Shane would like to eat, which is, actually is like not bad stuff. It's like good stuff. It's like salmon and things. Salmon and farro and shit is what I have in my notes. And Shane is very moved by this. But this is also where we get like a pretty pivotal thing, which is Hayden bringing up that he's on something called Fan Mail, which is obviously a comp for Cameo, where he does little videos for people. And it's like so notable here, at this point of the book that we know like something's going to go down with that. Roger Crawwell also is now inserting himself into the plot. He wants to meet with Shane, drag Shane to New York to meet at NHL headquarters in Manhattan, and basically tells him like, hey, heard you're gay. There's rumors that you're gay. Shane is out to his team. Love that for you, Shane. But just like, don't be another Scott Hunter. Don't be an activist. Don't make a big deal about things. So this is like ratcheting more things up on Shane of like locking him up. Crowell says, of course, we as a league and as a sport want to talk about inclusion and diversity in hockey. Talk about this fucking guy. We want to see things move in the right direction, but too much talk about that stuff can be distracting. And he praises Shane for the awful way that he has been living his life, which is another shitty thing to pile on top of Shane. What I'm saying is I appreciate the way you handle yourself, Shane. I know you put hockey first and keep your private life private. That keeps everyone comfortable and keeps the focus on hockey. Anyway, Ilya, back in therapy, is now describing how he used to use sex as a release, but now he's very happy in his relationship with Shane. And eventually he tells Galena that he's in a relationship with another hockey player, and it's Shane Hollander. So he is out to like one person on this, but it is very different to be discussing these things with a therapist as opposed to like your familial and friendship support network, which Ilya still does not yet have. Speaking of that, though, Troy Barrett enters stage left, and now we are catching up with Role Model. So these books are now moving in tandem with each other. And he starts, like everyone, like me, not liking Troy. Specifically, even though he knows that Troy is good, he thinks that he has bad vibes, that Ottawa might be a bad team, but they have good vibes, and he's worried that Troy will bring bad vibes. And he does. Because in the early side of Troy being there, he drinks and stuff that happens in Role Model, we see the other side of it. Ilya notices that Ilya is having a terrible time, by the way. Like, this is a real bad November for him. He is miserable. He sees that Troy has like alcohol, and his instinct is like, maybe I should join him and I should get drunk. But he starts asserting himself as a leader, as captain, in order to provide that like mentorship to Troy. And as he begins to understand like, oh, Troy might be like me, Troy also has a shitty father like I had. He is like a little version of, and Lucas Haas, he's seeing these younger queer players who looked up to him. Troy literally had Ilya poster on his bedroom wall because Ilya is a lot older. Ilya and Shane are older than a lot of the younger players and the rookies. It kind of moves him toward that, like, while he is moving in the like maybe I could be a dad direction, he is like trying it out through leadership with the Centaurs. While in the November section, we get a short chapter where Shane drives at night from Montreal to Ottawa just to go to sleep with Ilya. That shows like how far their relationship has come. And Shane is very like critical towards Ilya about a lot of things. It's just like his personality, and Ilya, needles him a lot. That's his personality. And something Ilya does that we know from Heated Rivalry is he smokes a lot. He like kind of does and doesn't give up smoking in this book from time to time. Shane hates that Ilya smokes, and in this section he says, I will never forgive you if you get lung cancer and die. Another important thing, remember that. At the end of the November section, Shane and Ilya have sex in Ilya's home gym, which has dimmer lights that Shane doesn't understand why he has that. And Ilya says it says that it's for Shane because Shane does meditation and he knows that he likes the lights down for that. That's very moving to Shane. So of course they have sex in the gym, which is covered in mirrors, which is like the worst thing ever for Shane because he's very embarrassed by everything, including everything about himself. Another important thing, keep that, lots of important things in the first half of the book that are going to get paid off later. We move into December for a few highly consequential chapters. We get a third session with Galena, which is focused on this whole not having friends and Ilya not being able to talk about his relationship with people. We get very firmly established that Ilya is absolutely miserable when he and Shane are apart, and it's Galena who kind of puts Ilya in the direction of maybe talking to Troy, because he brings that up. But instead of talking to Troy, he actually talks to Luca in the gym, and they have a conversation about being a young player. And this seems to be mostly establishing like Luca as a potential future main character, but we don't see it very much from Ilya's perspective, but we know that they go to New York and that they mutually come out to each other. And Ilya tells Shane about this, and Shane is kind of jealous about it. And that really causes the friction in their relationship to amp up to another level, because Ilya is thinking about the fact of the imbalance of their relationship. And it's like he wanted to have something like what Shane has, and Shane is jealous about it. Very frustrating. They send like I'm sorry text to each other, but like this is going to this blows up even further at Christmas time. Christmas is very tense between the two of them. Shane has gotten Ilya a foosball table, and Ilya got Shane a much more thoughtful gift, a photo that from their very first ad campaign in their rookie season. Someone professionally photographed them for a hockey apparel brand that they were both signed to, and Ilya reached out to the photographer and got a candid photo of the two of them smiling, and he got it framed. Much more thoughtful gift than a foosball table. And Ilya kind of in this Christmas time together, he floats the idea of Shane going to a Centaurs party, and Shane is just like, absolutely not. Like, what are you talking about? He's just immediately against it, and Ilya just is furious because of everything that has been like coming up for him with Galena. All of it comes out here. He says, I have no one. Seriously, if we get outed, our fucking careers might be over. Everything I care about, Shane snapped his fingers. Gone. Everything, Ilya said flatly. Shane rolled his eyes. Not everything, but hockey is pretty important to me. No shit. Oh, fuck you. Sorry, I still want to win cups instead of smoking weed with my teammates between losses. That's a thing to say. My note here is just, oof. And this leads Ilya to ask the question, you wouldn't even choose me, would you, if it's between me and hockey? Would you choose me? Shane says, which is another wild thing to ask. And Ilya puts a fine point on it when he says, I already chose you, Hollander. Shane kind of immediately realizes that he fucked up, and he calls his mom and he's like, I don't know, like I messed up, I don't know. And he spirals a lot, and Yuna sort of coaches him through this. And this is like kind of a like Donkey and Shrek apart moment. Shane, for the first time ever, like goes onto Ilya's Instagram. Ilya is very active on Instagram, and he realizes that Ilya he posts a lot of different things. We know this, I think maybe even from Heated Rivalry. He posts just like lots of pictures of weird things. No, we know it from Role Model. It's like, oh yeah, he just posts pictures of stuff, like random things. We find out that those random things are all like references to his relationship with Shane. It's like the rings from their fake wedding and stuff like that. And Shane is like, oh no, I've been awful. And this is just like the kind of person Shane is. I don't know that he reads to me as someone who has who's not neurotypical. And I'll get into this when we talk about his character, but I kind of identify with him, and I have been through relationship troubles like this, where like you are maybe not attending as much to your partner as you should be, but also perhaps your partner is not communicating things to you. And if you don't have the level like a sufficiently high level of emotional intelligence, you might not be able to read their mind about those things. And Shane was not able to do that with Ilya. So he's kind of realizing what's going on here. Ilya goes to Galena during this time, and he's like absolutely pissed. He's rip shit. He's like, why didn't you fix me? You made it so much worse. And Galena's like, okay, well, there's more work to do here, but let's like officially diagnose you with depression. You are depressed, Ilya. And then Ilya and Shane reconcile over FaceTime, again, not Skype, and then we move into January. And this is the beginning of the historic winning streak for Ottawa, because this is the plane scene. This is Ilya's POV of their plane almost going down on the way to Tampa. This is a really important chapter. It's chapter 24 where it happens. It's really emotional. It's harrowing in the same way it was in Role Model. I cried reading this because Ilya thinks he's going to die. He sends like the kinds of things that you would send if you think you're going to die to the person that you love. It's a lot. Ilya thinks, we're going to crash. I'm going to die. I'll never see Shane again. We were going to have dogs and kids. Uh-oh, uh-oh. So Ilya in this, well, I'll talk about this later in the grab bag section, but he insta DMs Shane because he can't text him, which doesn't make sense. I'll just say it now. We don't need to deal with it later. We know that Shane and Ilya both have iPhones because they FaceTime with each other. And you can iMessage on Wi-Fi, so that he could have, but like Reid wanted it to be not something Shane saw right away, so it's like contained over in Insta DMs, which Shane doesn't really use. So anyway, Ilya DMs Shane, whatever happens, I'm with you. Oh no. Okay, nope, I'm good. Whatever happens, I am with you. Safe in your heart. I believe it. And when they land, he says to the air, to whatever higher power exists, thank you. I won't waste it. Shane finds out about this, and this is awful. This is one of those moments where, in a relationship that's hidden, it like hurts a lot because he could not grieve. He does have people he could grieve Ilya over, but he wouldn't be able to grieve him publicly. So when he learns about it, JJ is like, why are you like so upset about this? Like, there was some plane trouble and they were fine. And later, I don't think it's in this chapter, but later JJ is like, oh, you're gay and you're into Ilya. And you have like unrequited love for Ilya Rozanov. And Shane does go with that for a little while. He's like, yes, that's right. But at this moment, Shane is just absolutely distraught. Oh no, that is right here. Yeah, Shane just goes for it. He's like, yeah, that's what's going on. Not like I'm freaking out because the man that I want to marry it would like almost died. And so he takes that from man I want to marry to man I am going to marry. Because over the past few months, Shane thinks 10 years suddenly seemed like an impossible wait. Ilya comes home to his house. Shane is already there, and he has put a bunch of little electric candles everywhere. And Ilya thinks it was beautiful and weird. But that's when Ilya remembers something he said to Shane at Shane's cottage back in Heated Rivalry, which is that he said he would cover the dock at Shane's cottage with candles and ask him to marry him. And that's when he realizes that, Shane got down on one knee, and I cried again. There was lots of crying here in January. January is a very tearful month, and I think it's very cute because this also happened to me. That Shane has a ring for Ilya and puts it on, and it doesn't quite go all the way, and Shane just says, nuts. But Ilya puts it on his chain with the crucifix of his mother's. I think that was very sweet. And I continued to cry when Ilya said, I will be very proud to... When Ilya says, I will be very proud to be your husband. So now Shane is thinking summer for everything. We're going to come out. We're going to go public. We're going to get married in the summer. It's January. The summer is soon. Not 10 years from now. The summer. Ilya later, while he's wearing the chain, thinks like he really likes feeling the ring there, and no one has asked him about it. It sent a thrill through him every time he felt it. No one had asked about the ring. Probably no one had noticed it. Ilya wouldn't give a straight answer if anyone did ask. And in my notes, I said, don't you mean a gay answer? Anyway, this is where Ilya gives his big pump-up speech to the team that, like, we are just as good as New York. We've got me. We've got Wyatt. We are going to be the winningest team ever. And they go off and they do that. We do get a little interlude at the All-Stars weekend where Shane wins fastest skater, even though Ilya thinks that he's the fastest. It is essentially a tie, but they're at a hotel. So I think this is the one time where they have hotel sex, kind of recalling Heated Rivalry. And Shane possibly douches here. And they have a nice, slow, very long, very sensual sex scene, which includes a lot of rimming, to which Shane says, holy yes, yes, which is like, that is the right reaction. At this point, Roger Crowell has had that shitty phone call from Role Model with Troy, and Ilya goes to confront him about that. And Shane backs him up. Shane is with him there, and they are like, "Hey, you're being an asshole. Like, don't do this." Shane actually goes further than Ilya and tells Crowell, like, "Hey, the league should be following what Troy is doing. This is about the." This is about the accusations about Dallas Ken. The Scott Hunter stuff also comes up again, and Crowell says anyone who feels the need to come out is welcome to do so. But I don't see why it has to be such a big deal, he laughed without humor. It hardly matters these days, does it? His gaze landed on Shane again. It matters. It is now February. We are approaching the end of the book. Ottawa is on their like huge winning streak, and Ilya is happy because hockey was fun again. Ilya catches up with Svetlana in a nice little scene where they catch each other up on their lives. Svetlana actually works for the NHL. She got her MBA, and she's like doing some sort of, I don't know, MBA related thing for Boston. And she she doesn't know that Ilya is bisexual, but she kind of figures out that like, oh, you're in a secret relationship, and it's probably with a man. and she asks him, "Did you fuck every woman in Canada and had to move on to men?" But Ilya is now out to Troy and to Svetlana, and he feels good. He's feeling better, like he's making progress. Pride Night, which is the end of Role Model, happens, and Shane and Ilya are like very happy and like quite emotional after seeing all the support for Troy. We also get I guess I am doing every sex scene in the book. I think I maybe skipped one, but there is some sex between Shane and Ilya that leads into like a buttwards direction for Ilya. We learn that this was established in Heated Rivalry, but like Ilya doesn't like to bottom, Shane doesn't like to top. But Ilya doesn't always mind having some attention down there, and Shane lavishes some attention down there, and to the point where Ilya gets his first ever hands-free anal orgasm. Big deal. Although he did cheat a little because he was humping a pillow, so it was almost it was hands-free, but it was not totally like without aid. Which is fine, by the way. That is fine. It doesn't have to be hands-free. I don't understand this. It's March. We're in the last quarter of the book, and things are going to start happening. Shane and Ilya are, like, they are essentially reconciled through a lot of these things now, but Ilya, crucially, has not told Shane about his depression, and Shane has not really been tested in any way on like choosing Ilya over hockey. Like they're just kind of on their road toward like, we're gonna do this thing and we'll see what happens in the summer. And it is at this point where Ilya gets a dog, Anya. And Shane's immediate reaction is like, no dogs. But he thinks better of it. He was gonna lecture Ilya why he shouldn't have a dog, but Ilya is so happy with this dog. Recall like how much he was in love with Chiron in Role Model. So Shane is like, all right, dogs. The end of the chapter where Anya is introduced, Shane thinks the room was quiet and so full of love it was almost suffocating. And if someone had told Shane that morning he'd rather pet a dog until she fell asleep than have sex with his boyfriend, he would never have believed them. But life was full of surprises. Unfortunately, life is also full of negative surprises because this is when Shane and Ilya are forcibly outed. So remember Cameo, fan mail, that thing. So Hayden had recorded a fan mail video at his house in a room that had mirrors that looked on to the outside, and Shane and Ilya were kissing, and he sent the video with them kissing in the background to someone who put it on Twitter, and now it's all over the internet, and it's like, well, gotta deal with this now. They'd been so close to telling the world on their own terms a few months. What will happen is that the Montreal Voyagers are going to be absolute shitheels to Shane about this, whereas the Ottawa Centaurs are going to be very supportive to Ilya. Coach Weeb comes over to Ilya's and tells him that Crowell wants both of them benched and dealt with, but Weeb isn't going to do that, and he's got the support from the owners, these very curious owners who we started hearing about in Role Model. Weeb says that Shane and Ilya have his support because he's bisexual, and he had a thing. He had a thing with a hockey player like in his rookie year. And to that, Ilya says, this team is very gay. Hayden is the only one who stands up for Shane. JJ is furious with him. No one else will talk to him. The coach benches him, sends him home, and this causes Shane to eat a Snickers bar, and now he is abandoning his performance diet. So I guess he's like magically no longer has disordered eating. Crowell wants to meet in Montreal with the guys. So before that meeting, there is a very short but consequential chapter where Ilya Shane in Shane's trophy room. They both have trophy rooms for all of their Stanley Cup rings and important pucks and trophies and medals. And Ilya thinks that Shane needs a reminder. Reminder of what? Of who the fuck you are. Ilya tells him, I feel like I'm fucking a king right now. And I would say that it is perhaps the best sex scene for character and story stuff that Rachel Reid has done. And it is also mercifully quite short, given that we want to like get into the end game here. Oh, end game. Keep that. That's another one. Keep that in mind too. Oh, sorry. King. I told you. Dynasty earlier. King. This is good writing. They meet with Crowell, and he is again total shitheel. He's such a pompous asshole. He's like, there's only a few things I can't stand: surprises, disloyalty, and liars. But the thing I hate the most is being embarrassed, and I especially hate it when the league is embarrassed. So he's like, you guys are gonna say this was a prank gone wrong, and they're like, no, we're gonna get married and you. He says don't post your own statement about this, and they do. Farah Jalali has written them a very nice statement, and they put it on Instagram along with photos of them being boyfriends together. And they're like, we're doing this. This is happening. JJ shows up at Shane's, and he says like, hey, I'm mad at you because we're friends, and you didn't tell me about this. Not because, you're gay and that stuff. But it kind of, and JJ brings up this thing that isn't really resolved. We can deal with it in the critical section of the video, but like JJ says, it's fucked up that you're dating the captain of the team we're probably going to be facing in the playoffs. I like kind of agree with that. I think that is not explored very much because we already know these guys for like 700 pages, and we're like, well, of course they wouldn't do that. But like JJ wouldn't know that, and neither would anyone else. Anyway, April. We're gonna like fly through the end of the book at this point. The playoffs begin, and there is like a really good chapter of describing the competition between Ottawa and Montreal. It basically goes to game 7, and game 7 is a battle, which goes to overtime, and it's about to go to double overtime, and it all comes down to Shane and Ilya. Ilya gets the puck, and Shane trips, and Ilya scores. And that is the end of Shane's time with his team, because his team thinks that he threw. In fact, all of hockey media is like full of speculation about like, oh, did he trip on purpose? What's going on with this? This is exactly why they were concerned about, Shane particularly was concerned about them being professional rivals and then dating or eventually becoming husbands, is that like these kinds of questions. Shane like kind of jokingly suggests that, like his team has made it clear that like you can't stay. So he jokingly suggests that he should go to Ottawa. But Ilya's like, yeah, you should come to Ottawa. Ottawa goes on to play against New York, Scott Hunter's team, and they lose. But Scott shows up at Ilya's while Ilya and Shane are together. And Ilya says, are we getting a lecture from Dad? Scott is actually putting another kind of team together. Remember who Scott is based on? He's there to talk about Roger Crowell. Crowell is a dinosaur. He's standing in the way of progress, which is part of why I wanted to talk with you. Carter Vaughn and I are trying to start a group of NHL players. He paused. No, of hockey players. I've already reached out to Max Riley and Leia Campbell, who we remember from camp, who are interested in fighting back against toxic hockey culture. Not just homophobia, but all of it. Racism, sexism, rape culture, transphobia, toxic masculinity. I know that sounds kind of huge and impossible, but it has to start somewhere. Like a club, Ilya asks, of nice hockey players? And in my notes I say, he's literally assembling them. Scott goes on to talk about how his book, Game Changers, really didn't change the game that much. When I heard Troy's story, it made me realize that queer NHL players still didn't feel safe coming out. And that's just one problem with hockey culture. Sometimes it seems so broken, I don't know if it can be fixed, but I want to try. He's organizing. He's organizing people to accomplish something. So I think that's great. I think that's a great way for things to be coming to a close. So like we're kind of in... There is a formal epilogue, but now we're kind of in the coda to the book. Shane turns 30. They decide that their wedding is going to be... Oh, it's May. They decide that their wedding is going to be in July, so just a couple months. So we go to July. We find out that Shane got traded to Ottawa. And the owners are so supportive of Shane and Ilya that they get Shane and Ilya reservations at a fancy restaurant. We don't know anything about these owners. They're just three siblings from some old money Ottawa family. Who could those owners be? Maybe we shall discuss it a little later in the video. Later, it's their wedding day. David Hollander kind of adorably helps Ilya get ready, and they chat. And David says, "What I'm trying to say, and Yuna's always been the better speaker, is I've always felt so lucky to have a son as wonderful as Shane that I never expected to be blessed with a second one." Mm. So they get married. It's very nice. And they dance to Rihanna's Diamonds. And why did no one tell me that there's a Rihanna song in this book? And the book, before the epilogue, ends with Ilya saying, "I love you so much it sucks." Shane beamed at him. "That's too bad because this is as good as it's gonna get." "No," Ilya said fondly. "I don't think it is." There's an epilogue, very short chapter in October. It is the home opener for Ottawa, the very first game where Shane and Ilya will play together. Shane is now a hometown hero because he is from Ottawa. They both skate out on the ice and they end up across from each other, like so many times before. Facing each other, but not facing off, finally. And my final note for this entire series is that they plan to win a Stanley Cup together. And we think they will. The end. That was a very long recap. Oh boy, but Rachel, you wrote a really long book. Overall, I liked this book. I think that if this is the last thing in the Game Changers series, I think it leaves it in a very good and hopeful place. A happily ever after for, kind of the two breakout characters in the series, and some positive directions for the NHL. I do have a number of critical thoughts about the book, but before I get into those critical thoughts, I do want to just expand a little bit on like the general things that I liked about it. And I think it's hard to not say that Ilya Rozanov is the star of this book, the real main character of this book. I think that Reid has some very incredible and sophisticated character writing for all of the characters in this book, but particularly for Ilya. He goes on quite a journey with his depression and his bitterness in his relationship with Shane, and how they are having to hide it. Beginning his journey of potentially becoming, a father one day. Although I do think it is like not well explored, him wanting to potentially like avoid the mistakes that his own father made. But you can't put everything in this book. It was only 438 pages. I'm getting into my critical thoughts. It was just nice. And Reid, I think at this point has really nailed character writing, dialogue writing, and just like very seamless humor throughout these books while still dealing with serious subjects. I think Role Model is a stronger book, but I also think that Role Model and The Long Game kind of go together. And I'm sure that this is heresy for all of the Shane and Ilya stands out there, but I think that these two books are the most important books in the series, and not Heated Rivalry and The Long Game. You get a lot of what is supposed to be in Heated Rivalry in this book. If you want the like half to 60% erotica of Heated Rivalry, okay. I think a lot of the sex scenes in The Long Game between Shane and Ilya are actually better than the sex scenes in Heated Rivalry because they just mean more, but like it, anyway, I think that Role Model and The Long Game kind of snap together, bringing a lot of the themes together from the series and a lot of the characters together from the series, and does it in a very satisfying way. I do have some critical thoughts. So first and foremost is that I think that The Long Game is pretty indulgent, and that specifically like the length of the book and the amount of things that Reid is trying to do in the book. Now, I would say as the sixth book in this series, and as a book that fans essentially demanded, people really wanted, she did not intend, I don't think, to do a second Shane and Ilya story. I wouldn't say that she was forced to do it by fans, but there was a lot of demand for it. People were asking for this, and I think Reid did earn being indulgent, but it's hard to say that it's not indulgent. And it is like, really, it's too long. I didn't necessarily feel like any particular part dragged, but it it is crammed full of things, and I think that it probably would have worked a little bit better if it had been more focused. Like, we spend so much time establishing how miserable Ilya is, and then things at the end happen very quickly. It's kind of a little different from Heated Rivalry. It's almost like the opposite of Heated Rivalry, where the end of Heated Rivalry, the cottage stuff, is like 20% of the book, whereas the end of the long game is much shorter. And I'm especially thinking of like the wedding and the final epilogue. Those are just like a scant handful of pages. The other thing that I have significant critical thoughts about is the outing. Now, I have scrolled through Goodreads reviews of this, and I also asked a lot of people on Instagram like what they think about this book. And the outing comes up a lot. And my problem with it is not that it's like, oh, you shouldn't be writing like the forced outing of these characters, or like it's irresponsible and things like that. That's not, I don't particularly have a problem with that. My problem is that it has to do with the characters, and specifically with Shane. Shane's journey is supposed to be of someone who is not perceptive, who's not picking up on what is going wrong in his relationship, who is prioritizing himself and hockey over his relationship, comes to understand what is truly important, and then has to make a choice. And his choice will be Ilya. His choice will be Ilya over hockey. But since the Voyagers are basically assholes to Shane, he isn't tested in that choice for Ilya. So he is making a leap, right? Like leaving Montreal, being forced out of Montreal, he is having to like trust that he will be able to continue doing hockey. But because it was a force coming out, he did not choose. There was no choosing for Shane. And he really didn't have any choice about staying in Montreal. So he just kind of ends up at Ottawa, and it all works out in the end. I think that, especially for how long this book is and how Shane and Ilya's characters are positioned across from each other throughout the course of the book and the arcs that they take, I think that this was a absolutely huge missed opportunity for us to get much more depth in Shane's character. So if I had been thinking about how I might want to test a character like Shane at this moment, what I would have been thinking about is, what if Roger Crowell and the Voyagers were essentially wolves in sheep's clothing with regards to Shane and his outing? What if Crowell saw the possibilities of using Shane as like a counterpoint to Scott Hunter, and he, instead of being aggressive and mean and an asshole and a jerk, if he had said, hey buddy, like, we're here for you, we're gonna support you, the Voyagers are gonna like increase your salary and they're gonna sign you on to a new 10-year deal, you know, all you have to do is leave this Ilya thing behind. It's like, you understand, right, son? Like, two rivals, there can't be any perception of favoritism here. You know, it's like, and Ilya, you know, it's like, why do you even like that guy? Aren't there like like Eunice says, like, aren't there nice guys in Montreal? It's like gay capital of Canada. Like, if they had been kind of fake supportive of Shane in a way where at the beginning of the book he might have been more tempted by it, if there had been temptation for Shane to stay, but in order to do that, he would have to leave Ilya, or he would have to continue to put Ilya in an impossible position. That would have been a test. So that was what I think was really missing here, and what like so many people just like don't like Shane. And I think that this would have been more redemptive of Shane than just, oh, I'm nice now and I'm proposing to you, and it's just like, it's all better. That if he had actually had real temptation and had still chosen Ilya, I think that was like the biggest missed opportunity of the book, and possibly the biggest missed opportunity of the series. A few other critical thoughts before I get into a short section about Shane and some ways that I think people might misunderstand him, and I'm just gonna talk a little bit about myself here as well. So this will just like let you know about some bias on my part with respect to Shane. I think the fan mail, like cameo outing, is just like overly telegraphed. I knew right from the first act when it was established, like this is gonna be the thing. I think that you could have had any number of things like that that was a little bit more seamlessly integrated that didn't like it just sticks out like a sore thumb. And two other I'm not going to go like this video is going to be extremely long, so I don't want to like unpack these to like a really I don't want to extensively unpack these. But two other things both related to Shane that I just could have dealt without are one, I think that Shane being biracial again basically has nothing to do with this book, and it just doesn't feel like it just doesn't feel right. And the longer the story went on, the more it bothered me that except perhaps buried deep in his personality, there's really nothing about him being biracial that is relevant to the book. It doesn't like hardly comes up. Kind of reminds me of Fabian and his Lebanese family. And the longer we have this biracial character who is experiencing like intense oppressions and marginalizations for other reasons, the more it kind of like highlights how we're not dealing with that biracial nature. So by the end I was like, I wish that you hadn't made him half Japanese at all if it just wasn't even going to be relevant and not dealt with in a deft way, in the way that I felt like Rachel Reid deals with a lot of things with a pretty a level of deftness and a firm hand. Final thing is the performance diet. This is weird. This was ill-advised. I think it's over the line of disordered eating. And again, it's another thing that's just like it doesn't get addressed substantively. It gets addressed magically. So after everything comes out with Shane, he just like abandons the performance diet and now he's eating Snickers. And at the end of the book, he's like, I can have a cheeseburger if I want every once in a while. It's like, yeah, of course you can. I think a lot of the stuff with Shane comes down to it's unfortunate that Ilya went to therapy and Shane didn't, because Shane probably has more problems than Ilya does. And this is what I want to get into with Shane. People hate this guy. People don't like that he was selfish, and everyone like loves Ilya for very good reasons and feels like Ilya had reasons to that basically in this fight Ilya was right. And I think that this is not the best way to interpret what's going on with these characters. My interpretation is that Shane probably has some neurodiversity. I think that he is neuroatypical, and I can bring some of my personal experience here. I have ADHD, and my ADHD, especially many years ago before I sought some professional help and therapy for it, would often lead me to interrupt people when they were speaking, but also to not be particularly attentive to people. I might not notice certain things about them. And in my relationship at the time, I was with someone when this was going down, I was with someone who had an anxiety disorder. And I was like vaguely aware of this anxiety disorder, but the person I was with never really told me the extent of it, and that their anxiety was often triggered by ADHD behavior of mine, like interrupting and forgetting things. And some of it is just like some of like my issues are like uh oral things, not oral with a O, with an AU. Like I have some oral processing issues. So I'm often asking people to repeat themselves. It's just like things don't like track for me. I see a lot of that in Shane. Things that you might read as narcissistic, but actually are like different ways of thinking and processing. Shane is obviously deeply in love with Ilya, but the way that they relate to each other is different. Shane has like lower emotional intelligence. We see that with the way that he interacts with the kids at the camp. He is not as demonstrative as Ilya is, and he is very shame and embarrassment driven. He isn't always comfortable like talking about his feelings. Ilya, on the flip side, is having like real struggles, and Galina pushes him on this. He does not tell Shane about it. And I think that this is like the key thing, which is that we the reader are aware of all of these things about Ilya. And so when we see Shane not being attentive to them, that seems like narcissistic, and that seems like he is being like cavalier with Ilya's feelings. But what is actually going on is that Shane is not aware of them because he's not a mind reader. And I think that this is a huge problem in so many people's actual real life relationships, is that you are feeling something and you don't express it to your partner and you just expect them to know it. Ilya kind of expected that with Shane, and he was upset that Shane didn't know those things. But Shane didn't know those things. It takes until like 2/3 of the way through the book before Ilya says, I needed professional help. I have depression. I'm really going through a lot of things right now. Like they have blowups and he doesn't even tell them those things. Right? Now, there are unlikable aspects about Shane's characters. Going back to Heated Rivalry, the whole like condo thing I think is like extremely weird. And that is all about the shame and the control stuff with him. And that is very present in the long game. So I'm not, this is, I don't know. I feel like I'm like defending Shane a little bit, but I think like what's going on is this is a realistic way that couples who are in love with each other might have like a fight that's not like one fight. Like it's a larger fight. Like it's a larger potential incompatibility in their relationship. And Ilya is getting some help for it, but Shane kind of isn't. Shane figures some stuff out on his own over the course of the book, but I think that Ilya would be very well advised to encourage Shane to also seek some therapy on the Centaur's Dime, because Shane has some really big things to work through about like control, and it comes up a few times in the back quarter of the book after the throne room scene, that I think at least twice Ilya says like, "Do I have to you in the throne room again to remind you about like who you are and stuff?" You can't someone's brain right. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter how good your dick is. You can't fix everything with dick. You can fix a lot of things. You can fix a lot of things. A lot. But not everything. All right, a few other big topics that I would like to talk about and unpack a bit before we close out Game Changers. Although I do think we will have one final video about the whole series. But let's talk about the rivalry. Actually, there's the rivalry, and there's a smaller group of stuff related to that, which I had in my notes titled "For the Love of the Game." It is very important, crucial even for this story, that these two guys are probably the best players next to Scott Hunter in the entire league, and they are professional rivals, and they are also personal rivals. And I think we see so much more of their rivalry in the long game than we did in Heated Rivalry. And I'm something that I just want to like put my finger on right here is that a friend of mine on the internet who loves this series DM'd me and said that that they and a lot of people who are big fans of this series and these two guys really are probably more fans of this book, and that it kind of goes together with Heated Rivalry. Like it's one thing for them. There were so many people at the end of last year, I was kind of like teasing that I might be doing a project like this. And I mentioned like, oh, Heated Rivalry is a very likely book for one of the first ones that I do. So many people were like, well, you have to read Heated Rivalry and the long game. You have to read both of them. And I was just like, no, I don't. I can do whatever I want. I don't have to do anything. How, like, you can't have a book and say you have to read another book. Like, books are supposed to stand on their own. And Heated Rivalry was written as a standalone. There was never supposed to be a long game. So I think that like highlights major issues with Heated Rivalry, that so many people are like, no, you've got to do both of them. It's like, yeah, half of the story is in another book. And I think a lot of the rivalry, the nice part, not nice, the competitive aspect of it is in this book. We had glimpses of it in Heated Rivalry, and we are certainly told plenty about it. But a lot of Heated Rivalry is about the media and the league. I didn't even have and I had a whole section in my Heated Rivalry discussion about that. I didn't have any notes on that in this book. Like, it is relevant, particularly at the end, but like this one is a lot more about the competitiveness between these two guys. And it's the very first, I don't know if it's the first sentence, but it's certainly in the first chapter. They're running, and they are making a competition out of just running outside. As much as I don't like the performance diet, and I think that it gets kind of weird, Shane, it wants the performance diet. Why it keeps called the performance diet? He wants that to be a competitive aspect between him and Ilya. And actually, it's more like Shane can't believe that he is doing all of this stuff, and Ilya keeps eating greasy, carby food and drinking alcohol, and like he is somehow just as good at sports as Shane is. Just goes to show you that the performance diet probably is not doing anything. It's more about Shane's Shane's noggin. But there are lots of little examples of this throughout the book in a way that I think just helps underline the like positive aspects, or it is just who these guys are. They like to needle each other and they like to compete with each other. Shane is driving home and Ilya wants to like maybe give him a little hand or mouth action in the car, and Shane, being like prudent student, is like, no, we can't do that, what are you talking about? So Shane starts like, or Ilya starts like touching himself, and Shane says, stop it, seriously, we'll be home soon. Not the way you drive. Shane's jaw tightened. I'm not turning this into a game. That is their relationship. They turn everything into a game that one of them can win. Like sexual things. So jerking off together like this always felt like a competition, even when it wasn't. This time, Ilya had explicitly stated that he wanted them to come together, but even that sounded like a challenge to Shane. Fortunately, challenges were a huge turn on for him. At Christmas, Shane got Ilya the foosball table. They wake up together, and the narrator tells us they'd woken up together after a somewhat competitive evening playing foosball on the new table Shane had bought as a Christmas gift for Ilya. We get several literal hockey competitions between them. I think a really good chapter in the the back quarter when they are in the playoffs against each other. We are mostly told about how it goes, but I thought Reid did a really good job of just like describing the ups and downs, and it's tied, and then one of them's ahead, and then I think that just worked very well. And then everything comes down to the two of them. That shows off the competition. They also are rivals at the All-Star Skills competition for fastest skater. Ilya thinks he's the faster skater and that Shane is maybe the better like puck handler. I don't know what you're trying to prove, Ilya said. That I'm the fastest skater in the league, obviously. Ilya huffed. There was no way Shane was the fastest skater in the league. Even if it were a competition between only the two of them, Ilya had always been considered the faster skater. He could admit that Shane was a better stick handler, but Ilya was faster, no question, and then Shane wins it. But it's like basically a tie. Shane picks up one of Ilya's moves, and Ilya is so offended that Shane is doing an Ilya move. He said, that's my move. He's with Yuna and David, and he's eating ice cream that they gave him, and it was like, this is probably in the good stuff section. Let's pull it out right now. Ilya is kind of moping with Yuna and David, and Yuna says, there's ice cream if you want some. No, thank you, Ilya said. Then, what kind? So he's got his ice cream bowl, and he's in a blanket on a couch with Yuna and David. It's very cute. And he's like, that's my move! That move is called the Rosanov! Ilya exclaimed. He cannot do it! He just did, David pointed out. Like, I think that's great. I think that that shows how integrated this is into their relationship and into their professional lives. Like they both love hockey. And a huge theme of this book is how they love each other more than hockey, but they both really do love hockey. Comes up all the time. Scott Hunter wanting to assemble the Hockey Avengers is like the most like didactic, demonstrative, explicit statement from Reid in the entire series about like hockey isn't great, but it can be great if we make it great, because it has all of these problems and we recognize that and we want to do something about it. But they all want to do something about it because they love hockey. And I think like one of the most important statements about this is at Game Changers Camp in the beginning of the book. This is Max says this. I fucking love hockey, Max said with a big grin. Max glanced at the tables of kids all around them. This is seriously the best. I've been mad at the game for a while and I needed this. And then his wife, Leia, comes into the conversation. Leia dropped into the seat next to her husband. Are we talking how much we love Ryan? No, Ryan said to his sandwich. We're talking about how fucked up hockey is and how we love it anyway. That is woven into Shane and Ilya's characters and the competitive aspect of them, and it's the very sinew of the book that it's written by someone who loves this thing that has serious problems. Closing out the like competition rivalry stuff, there's some very sweet things related to it that comes up, such as when they broke the kiss, Ilya said, "You will be a good dad." Shane rested his forehead on Ilya's shoulder and smiled. "Not as good as you." Ilya huffed. "Not everything is a competition with us. We'd find a way to make parenting a competition." Strong arms tightened around Shane. "No, it will be together, peaceful." That's what Ilya says, but I still think that it will be a competition between them. And then the final thing that I think is very adorable is that when they start imagining coming out, they even have kind of a competition about who the other players would be more jealous of for being with the other guy, which I think is just very cute. As always, I'm going to close with a bunch of good things, stuff that I highlighted that I liked. But before we do that, let's take a little detour into discussing how the book deals with queerness and sexuality and masculinity. And we'll start with like a heavy one, which is internalized homophobia. I think that this book this book complements Heated Rivalry, particularly with Shane, about how deep homophobia can seep into us. There are many, many examples of this with Shane. We talked a lot about a lot of them already. Here are some more specific things. So this first one is from early in the book, when on the double date between Shane and Ilya and Ryan and Fabian. He was like, this is Shane thinking about Fabian. He was like really blatantly not straight in a way that Shane wasn't used to. This kind of man who, when Shane had been younger and still figuring himself out, he would look at and think, I'm not gay because I'm not like him. It wasn't a good way to think about anything. But even as a gay man who was in love with another man who he had gay sex with, Shane couldn't help the knee-jerk reaction of uneasiness in Fabian's presence. So one, I think this just proves that Shane needs to spend more time with queer people. He doesn't have enough queer community in his life. He doesn't do there is like such a debate in the queer community about like queer culture, and I think it is not a debate that is meant to be settled. It is something that it's meant to be in the air, and we all like engage with it in our own ways. But like Shane is very much on the like I just have sex with men kind of gay guy spectrum, but he might want to experience more queer culture, like watching Drag Race at a queer bar, going on a queer cruise, going dancing at a club, things like that. But certainly, like, he needs to spend more time with queer people so he is not, intimidated or weirded out by someone like Fabian. I think that, like, this is a very reasonable thought reasonable. I think it is understandable that Shane, the kind of character that Shane is, would have this kind of thought about Fabian. It is unfortunate though. And it's definitely, I don't think it's the kind of thought that Ilya would have. I think that Ilya has had more experience than Shane when it comes to this. Talking about Troy, who, was DL throughout a good portion of the book, Ilya tells Shane, I took him out last night to the Kingfisher. Was his first gay bar. Then Ilya laughed. You'd like him. You're both very bad at being gay. Ilya is putting his finger on something about Shane and not his prostate for the first time. Like, you're kind of uncomfortable being gay, bro. Comes up again. Someone asks Ilya, why is it a secret? You wouldn't be the only gay hockey players. Or queer. Sorry, I shouldn't assume. I am bisexual, Ilya said, nodding. Shane is super gay. I'm regular gay, Shane argued. And I think that this is like another aspect of Shane. Shane's like, he doesn't want to be seen as like gay. And I just don't think I've got the time, energy, and wherewithal to get into this. But that intersects, well, it should intersect with his racial identity, and it doesn't. But it intersects with the fact that he likes to bottom. And that is not dealt with whatsoever in this book. I think it actually does come up in his internal thinking and Heated Rivalry a little bit. Like, oh God, I can't believe that I like this. So it's in a very negative context, but there is bottom shame and femme shame. And this book does not deal with that. Actually, Christopher Rice, C. Travis Rice, his books, particularly the first and the second in his Sapphire Cove series, kind of deal with that in a much more sophisticated way, if you're interested in like seeing how that can get explored. So we are treated to just like gobs and gobs of internalized homophobia in this book. And Shane kind of lets more and more of that go as the book progresses, as he this is why I think it's a good book. Because the themes are very interwoven, and they're interwoven with the character. So Shane's internalized homophobia is very deeply, inextricably related to the League, which is homophobic. It's homophobic to him. Like, we get his coach, after they win some game, says like, let's not start jerking each other off just yet. And the narrator says, Shane nodded along with them, agreeing with his coach, but wishing he could have used less homophobic wording. After nearly 30 years of a life in hockey, though, Shane barely knew what counted as homophobic anymore. Like, this is just one of many, many examples in this book and the other books. Like, he wants to hide because of the kind of person that he is, But all of that is shaped by his job, by his profession that he is in the NHL. So I think that that's like a good thing that all like snaps together. And then as he gets closer and closer to coming out, he lets more and more of that go. But he hasn't let all of it go. Definitely needs some time. Definitely needs some therapy time. Let's talk a bit about butt stuff now. So there was this like steady drumbeat, I thought, of about Shane that that this man douches. And Reid doesn't come right out and say it in this book, but I think it's here. So I assumed that about Hollander in Heated Rivalry, just because of the kind of person that he is. And then we get like, it kind of like builds and builds and builds in the long game. So this is actually the only couple that doesn't use condoms in these books, because, and I'm actually very glad that they don't, because that's like, not everyone chooses to do that, but I think a lot of couples in long-term relationships choose to not use condoms. So they don't. And in one sex scene, Ilya finishes inside of Shane, and then Ilya comes back after sex and urges Shane to get cleaned up, saying, "Come on, you hate to be dirty." And that was the first time I said in my notes, "This man douches." Like if he doesn't like to be dirty after, he's not gonna like to be dirty during. Another sex scene, Ilya says, condom, question mark. They rarely use them anymore, but sometimes Shane preferred them for easy cleanup. And then we finally get it. We get what I have in my notes. Possible douching, implied ass prep. This is at the hotel. Once Shane had changed, brushed his teeth, fixed his hair, and had gotten himself clean everywhere he wanted to be clean, he made his way to Ilya's room down the hall. This man douches. The other thing about anal is some interesting versatility in their relationship. So, this is about Ilya's ass. After 3 years of being an exclusive couple, they knew each other's bodies well, and they knew each other's limits. Ilya wasn't interested in bottoming any more than Shane was interested in topping, but sometimes Ilya liked it when Shane gave his ass some attention. Sometimes Ilya just wanted to be taken as far out of himself as he could, and this seemed to do it for him. "You want to try a toy, maybe?" Shane asks Ilya. Ilya hadn't been a fan of the dildo Shane tried on him once 2 years ago, but they had smaller things now, like vibrating prostate massagers and plugs. This kind of reminds me a little bit of Fabian with Ryan. So everything about them makes you think that like, oh, Ryan would top and Fabian would bottom, and we only ever see them do that. But there is implied versatility there. Because Fabian thinks like, oh, I want to be able to do this for Ryan. The pleasure that I'm getting from the butt stuff, I would like him to get. Actually, Shane and Ilya are the only exclusive tops and bottoms in the series. Scott and Kip flip. Kyle doesn't top Eric, but I mean, he like gets up in there, and it's implied that Eric wants him to. Again, so it's like it's implied, and it's also implied in what I just said that Fabian will at some point probably top Ryan. Troy and Harris flip. So really, Shane and Ilya are the only ones who are exclusive tops and bottoms. And it turns out that Ilya does still like some some kinds of butt stuff. And I think that this reads like fairly true, especially we know from a lot of social science research that there is greater versatility in long-term relationships. I do have this one line I kind of bump on a little bit though. And this is like kind of a theory that I'm slowly developing as I'm reading more and more romance books. The line that I bump on is, where is it again? Sometimes Ilya just wanted to be taken as far out of himself as he could go. And this seemed to do it for him. There does seem to be a positioning in a lot of books. This is not like a Reid specific thing, of anal sex being the most sex. And the thing that really got me thinking about this is for the next video in this series, which will be about Saint by Sierra Simone, I'm reading casually, I'm not annotating them, the two previous books, Priest and Sinner, and they both, in male-female relationships, also kind of implicitly position anal sex as like the most sex. Like you're passing this threshold. That in a male-female relationship, like vaginal intercourse is like normal sex, but anal intercourse is like, that's like a step beyond. And like that wording here, it's like sometimes he wanted to be just, I keep missing it. I keep losing it. Sometimes Ilya just wanted to be taken as far out of himself as he could go. I think like that, to me, it kind of puts butt stuff on a pedestal in a way that I don't think is necessarily I don't like. I don't like. Maybe it works for you, but for me, less. We finally learn about Shane and Ilya's dicks. Ilya has foreskin and Shane does not. Ilya asks Shane, like, why did your parents do that? And he's like, I don't know. I couldn't ask them at the time. I think one very important thing about queer people is the persistent lack of like social support for queer relationships. So this comes up in the in the plane crash. Shane has an absolute freak out about this, and it's very reasonable. Who was Ilya's next of kin, even? The brother he never spoke to? Would Shane have been allowed to spread his ashes somewhere that Ilya would have liked? Maybe at the cottage, or maybe he preferred to be buried in Moscow with his parents. God, they never talked about this sort of thing. Anger flared through Shane's body, hot and sudden. They had lots of reasons to keep their relationship a secret, but those reasons seemed extremely unimportant now. What if Ilya had died? What if he had died? Shane would have died too, alone and secretly, and for the rest of his life. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not even secret, and we're like, we need to get married so that like I can say, it's like I've got all these documents and stuff, like legal documents, so that my partner can like help make medical decisions for me and all this sort of stuff. So I think that's very real. Final note that I have about queer men and sexuality. Ilya had learned to keep lube in most rooms of the house. Like wherever they go, there seems to be little sachets of lube, or he's got them in his pocket so that he can Shane wherever they are. And my note on this is that some people just keep a rolling cart with everything on it. Some people do that. Oh, and also lube. I guess this is really the last thing about queer men and sexuality. In the gym later, in some scene, Ilya is jerking Shane off, and he's got a little packet of lube. And he says, "It's a shame you don't have foreskin." And it's like I've given up on this, but it's like you can jerk off without foreskin and without lube. It is possible. I know. All right, last but not least, the good stuff. These are lines that I highlighted that I particularly liked, starting with, you lead the next passing drill. You're good at passing. Hayden's eyes narrowed as if he was analyzing Ilya's words, searching for the insult. Finally, cautiously, he said, I am good at passing. I lead Montreal in assists. I know. That's why I said it. Okay, then. Okay. Hayden studied him another moment, then nodded and skated away. Ilya hadn't realized how much fun it would be to confuse Hayden with compliments. He would have to do it more often. Oh, I already mentioned the ice cream at the Hollanders. There's ice cream, Una said, if you want some. No, thank you, Ilya said. What kind? Shane reached for his glasses case on the nightstand. He made a show of opening the case, pulling the glasses out, unfolding them, and putting them on like a nerdy reverse striptease. I'd probably be good at it, though. I've got a good body and I'm a nice guy. I know I'm not, like, smart, but compared to these dudes, I'm a Rhodes Scholar. I think this is Hayden, or maybe Boiseau, saying that they're a Rhodes Scholar. Rhodes. Shane said. When Rose has Shane out for the shopping trip, she has him try on a leather bomber jacket, and she says, it's short, so you won't be hiding that juicy butt. Juicy butt. You don't always want a juicy butt, though. It depends on, like, what the juice is. Oh, God. Do you have plans after the game? Ilya asked casually. Shane's smile grew. I'm wide open. Ilya hoped his own eyes showed the promise he was trying to silently transmit. You will be. Ooh, Ilya. Shane goes with a misconception that JJ has several times in the book. One is that like he has an unrequited thing for Ilya, but earlier, JJ's trying to like set him up with a guy, and his name is David, and Shane says, David. Sorry, that just reminds me of David Putty in Seinfeld. I'm saying it kind of like Elaine says it. David! Shane decided to play this up as an end to the conversation. My dad's name is David. I can't date a David. When Troy's first day is also coincident with Chiron. And Shane is interested in Troy, in talking about Troy, but Ilya is more interested in the dog. So Shane asks, so how was he about Troy? So cute, Shane. You should have seen him. He licked my face with his little tongue. When talking, Ilya tells Shane about Troy coming out, and they were at The Kingfisher and Scott and Eric were there. I like this moment, but it is like there's also friction going on here. Shane says, "Okay, so you had a queer NHL player meeting. You feel left out? I mean, yeah, kind of. What were you guys doing there? Just talking, drinking beer, having a fun time. You would have hated it." Yeah, that sounds like Shane. Speaking of things that Shane hates, I don't want a cookie. It was a lie. It was a fucking lie. He wanted a cookie so bad. This is like a little self-deprecating thing that it's like, Shane and Ilya are parting, and Ilya tells Shane, "Try not to win too many games." "You too." Ilya winked. "We never do." With respect to sexual encounters, Ilya tells Shane, 2 or 3 people is not an orgy. Shane's a little sheltered. I love that everyone keeps correcting Ilya about the word kennel, but Ilya just keeps insisting, "No, it's a hotel for dogs." Ilya asks Shane, "Are your parents still here?" "No, I told them they could go home. I loved having them here, but I want to be railed by your boyfriend." And that's just like, I like that. I like that. That's how it's supposed to be. This is so. What I'm thinking of is I did a video on TikTok years ago about red, white, and royal blue. And something that I complained about, that I critiqued about that book, is that there's no like casual jokiness about fucking between the guys in that book. And this is an example of exactly what I was thinking of, exactly what I was talking about. Now I know that these books are like a higher spice level than Red, White, and Royal Blue, but there's plenty of cursing in that, and like this is the kind of thing that you could get away with because there is like less granularity and detail on the sex scenes in a book like that. So anyway, I just think that I don't know. Yeah, some people want to get railed by their boyfriend sometimes, you know? What's wrong with that? After Ilya starts wearing the ring on his chain, he talks to Wyatt, and like Wyatt has remarked on it. "You noticed? I'm a goalie," Wyatt pointed to his own eyes. "I notice everything." "You are perceptive," Ilya said, trying out a word he'd recently learned. I like that. The last thing is a moment that passes between Ilya and Scott Hunter. Ilya has always been kind of prickly towards Scott Hunter, but he says, "I want to be friends," Ilya said simply. The truth was, he'd always had a lot of respect for Scott, and there was no reason to pretend otherwise. Being honest felt great. He'd have to tell Galena about it. And I guess that's the last thing. Oh, except there is one other bullet in my notes. There's one other thing that I said in the video earlier to remember. What was it? The owners! The owners. The owners who got Shane and Ilya a reservation at a fancy restaurant. The owners who were like totally backed Troy. Someone was in my DMs about this after my role model video saying like, who are these owners? They're so supportive. It would be so interesting to learn more about them. The only thing that we know about them is that they're 3 siblings from some old money Ottawa family. We never see them. We never really learn anything more about them. So who could the owners of the Ottawa Centaurs be? So I'm sure that there is some interesting story to tell about who these very progressive, supportive, old money Ottawa siblings are, but the owners of the Centaurs in the books, they represent someone. They stand in for someone. Have you realized who they are? The owners of the Ottawa Centaurs stand in for the real life fans of Shane and Ilya. The owners of the Ottawa Centaurs are you.